were the good guys. Man, we grew up with some jokers that I'm still scared of. I know I could beat them. I've seen their Facebook profile. Life has not been good to them. But I'm telling you, I'm still scared of them because of their reputation when we were growing up.
Back with one more down with my good friend and teammate, lifelong friend, neighbor, brother, Dr. Sylvester Patton III, Chaney running back, three-time All-City player, 90, 91, 92, and one of the greatest running backs of our era during our run of those early 90s. Glad to have you on and get a chance to spend a little bit of time with you and get that perspective from that first person point of view about, what you thought about your career, your development as you progressed and grew into the position. And then, some of that insight from a leadership standpoint and being a guy that was really the engine of those great teams for Chaney, 90, 91, and 92. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be a part of this podcast. It's been a blessing. All those who have come before, I honor them as well. So good to see you and to be with Dallas. It's just an honor to be a part of what's happening for the city of Youngstown and the surrounding area.
So, topically, we grew up in the same neighborhood off the south side, Glenwood Avenue area. We like to call it the Fosterville area to differentiate ourselves from uptown and down the hill. Can you give us some insight about your transition over to that part of the south side?
Well, only thing I know is 727 Brentwood, next street over from Winona, behind Laclede, and another street over from Sherwood. That's all I know. The community that we were brought up in, lifelong friends. We knew on our street. We knew everyone. We knew everyone in each home. We knew the kids. We knew the parents. The parents knew us. Their parents either grew up with our parents or knew them enough that if we were acting up down the street, they would call. So before we got home, we were already in trouble for something we did down the street. So we grew up in a great community, almost kind of like how our parents spoke about community back in the 50s and 60s. But we had a great community, and I loved where we grew up. Even though we were surrounded in some aspects of poverty somewhere and crime in other areas, we just had a good family upbringing where none of that really affected us. Or if we were poor, we didn't know we were poor because everybody on the street lived exactly how we did.
So, when you think back to that time and that neighborhood, that corridor of Youngstown, which is the Glenwood corridor, what are those early memories of being there? What are those things that stand out along that street back during the 70s and 80s?
Playing football, but I wasn't allowed in the street. So I would have to play on the sideline. I had to play on the grass. So I remember Candyland. George, who owned Candyland, going to buy Now Laters. Wasn't supposed to be across the street, other side of Glenwood, but went anyway. I'm going to Sparkle Supermarket for my grandmother, and never giving her back her change, and just the fun that we had going back to playing football on this. I couldn't go on the street, or at least my parents couldn't see me. So can you imagine? I'm dodging the cars that's in the driveway, the terrain of the different yards, catching the balls. You had to be athletic or know how to ride a wheelie. You know how our neighborhood was. You had to play basketball, Dallas, and I wasn't good in basketball. My next door neighbor had a hoop. Guy across the street, Brian had a hoop. Troy Carlton had a hoop, but I couldn't play, so I had to learn to play football, and the plays were drawn literally in the ground, and I'd run all my plays. So if I ran a post, I would have to start it on. I couldn't play in the street, so I had to start it on the sidewalk, and then I would run across the street to the other sidewalk so I can catch the ball. Isn't that crazy? Because I didn't want to get in trouble by my mother and father and my grandmother who lived next door. So we just had we had fun. We had fun.
Now, what you know about Mr. Paul's early in the morning?
Early, Mr. Paul's, the glazed donuts. How many times I was late walking from Brentwood to Cleveland School to get those donuts, and then you're forgetting about the donuts at the school were good because they would heat those donuts up, and they weren't Mr. Paul's, but they were in a wrapper. And I almost can't. What was the name of them? I can't do it now. And I remember pizza on Friday with the corn and come on, Doc. Man.
The peanut butter cookie. The peanut butter cookie.
I'm having a flashback. We used to in the applesauce, and so we would. You would have people bartering, for your cookies and your pizza, and man, those were just great.
Did you guys have when at Madison we had every Friday you could bring in, I think it was like a quarter, 50 cents, I can't remember, it might have been a quarter, but they would sell chips every Friday. Did you guys do that as like a fundraiser or something?
We had a ton of fundraisers. The greatest, we didn't do that one, but there was something you could buy, like extra stuff. And if you bought extra stuff, man, you was like, you was the big dog. Do you remember if you were at Madison? I know you had it wasn't Secret Santa. What was it called? Santa's Workshop.
Santa's Workshop.
Yeah, that was Santa's Secret Workshop. Yeah. That's exactly what it was.
Man, I bought my dad the same screwdriver and hammer set, and I thought I was doing something. Have my little $2. We can go down the hallway, and I haven't thought about those times in years. But these kids, they don't have the fun that we had. Yeah.
No, I think, one of the things that I've been talking to a couple guys about is, that if you wanted to do something, you had to go outside, you had to be in the neighborhood, you had to go I think for us, excuse me, you were playing football or you were playing basketball or, you were riding your bike, you were doing something. Now there's so many distractions with Netflix, YouTube, videos, TikTok, Instagram, and I think there's some good with all of that, but I think there's a lot of things that kids today are missing out, and the culture that you build and the relationships that you build, for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. I tell my son, won't you go outside? And he said that go outside and do what? I mean, go ride your bike. But no, he has that Switch and got a phone and PlayStation, and a lot of it is our fault as well. But we played, and we played hard, and we had fun, and we got injured, and we got hurt, and we were scared to tell our parents. And I remember concealing like scars and different things playing football because I wasn't allowed to play football. I didn't play. I played 1 year of Little League football, and at that time I was almost 30. I was 12 when the first time I played baseball, but I wasn't allowed to play football, so I had to conceal us playing tackle on the playground. This crazy stuff, tearing up jeans, and I would have to hide. I would come home and change my clothes, and then not knowing that my mother had to wash the clothes eventually, and realize that they were, and my father said, if you mess up your jeans again, I'm gonna make you wear the same jeans the next day. Well, my dad was a man of his word. All the stains in my jeans, he made me wear them the next day. And Cleveland school, they did not hold back on talking about what I had on. But yeah, we played hard. And when the lights came on, you better be on your way home home, or my grandmother and my father was coming to get me from wherever I was at.
We learned a lot of conflict resolution and just your place in the pecking order during those times because I remember growing up, we because of the makeup of our neighborhood and how many young families that had children, whether they be your age, younger than you, or a little bit older than you, we're interfacing with so many uh, older siblings of our friends and guys in the neighborhood. When we're in elementary school, they're in the upper level of junior high. When we make it up to that junior high level, they're in their last
Right.
years of high school. And you would get into those neighborhood conflicts out there with the big guys trying to go up to Fosterville playground and get picked for a pickup game in basketball, or meeting to play a neighborhood against neighborhood football in some of those areas. And there wasn't a limit to the age. So, you could be out there second, third grade and you playing with somebody who might be in ninth or 10th and they're not taking it easy on you. So,
Nope.
when we talk about that generation gap and how our children function versus how we were raised, I think it taught us a lot of real world practical lessons that we took out into the world. And I think it's the reason why our parents trusted us to be out of their sight, because there was an order to things then that is missing now.
Yeah. I used to try to go, I used to try to knock the biggest person out. If I could tackle the biggest person, if I could, they're gonna get me eventually. But if I can get that was my mindset. We would play with guys. You're right. Now you think about it, we in elementary school. Cats is in the 8th, ninth grade. But we knew where they lived down the street. So they was like, my best friend, growing up, Darren Watson, that was my guy. Darren was 5 years older than me,
Yeah.
but you couldn't tell me nothing. Mm-mm.
So where do you think that aggressiveness comes from? Is it developed in that space, or is it because you have that older cousin in Keith?
Yeah, it was definitely Keith. Keith beat me up a lot, and probably would still, try to beat me up. I think I maybe sort of, I don't know. But I had uncles. I had 3 uncles, and every time I walked past them, they would punch me in the chest. So even to this day, when I walk past them, I still flinch because I think they're going to do something to me. And you had to be aggressive where we lived. I mean, we didn't, Southside of Youngstown. It was we got after it. You had to fight. I fought. I mean, that little short walk from Cleveland to Brentwood, I probably got in 7, 8 fights. And I mean, and there was always a fight every day. So you had to learn to fight. I didn't always win them, but I had to learn to be aggressive. I'll never forget, and this is honest goodness truth. And Ron, you were there. I fought Devlin Townsend, and I had Devlin down, and I had my knees on his arms, and I had my hands up ready to, punch him in his face, and I showed mercy. I let him make it. Well, Devlin flipped me over and punched me in both my eyes, and I mean it hurt too. And then my dad came, and then I realized that I need to be more aggressive. And I remember my grandmother telling me, "You may didn't start the fight, but you better finish it." And if I ever hear that you ran away, my grandmother sent me outside to go fight someone as she watched from the porch steps. And she didn't mind me losing. She just mind me coming back to the house crying and not accepting the challenge. I mean, man, I should probably shouldn't have told that story, but that's the honest to goodness truth. We were just
Yeah. I
we
mean, it's
fought.
indicative of what our era was about and what our neighborhood was about, what our city was about.
Mhm.
And when you look at it, at the time, it seems like, the worst thing that's happening to you in your life at the moment. But as you look back with that backwards eye and that backwards lens, you see that it's just character building. It's teaching you how to deal with
Yeah.
challenges in the world, stand up for yourself, stand your ground, and then being able to know that you might take a L here and there, but you're going to be able to live through it. You'll have another day.
And then be friends the next day like nothing happened.
If you ever want to understand why men think the way they think, all you have to do is go and watch a group of first grade boys, and it tells you every single thing you need to know about us. Because
Mhm.
there's those alphas, there's those betas, and then there's those guys on the outside that don't want a part of any of that. And
Right.
and that was our whole experience growing up until we got to high school. It was always that type of environment.
And we were the good guys. And we were
Yeah,
kind of, and
absolutely.
we were hard and we were the good guys. Man, we grew up with some jokers that I'm still scared of. I know I could beat them. I've seen their Facebook profile. Life has not been good to them. But I'm telling you, I'm still scared of them because of their reputation of when we were growing up.
So you did the little league baseball thing with the Uptown Kiwanis League. That was the first sport that I remember you being a part of, and always one of those league all stars. As far as what everybody said about you, you were a great baseball player, and I thought that was going to be the sport that you kept going and developing in.
You know what? I actually did. I did as well because it was the only sport that I was that I played and I followed. I mean, I really I love the game of baseball. My father he taught it to me. I watched baseball. I still watch baseball, but I really intimately watched baseball. I collected baseball cards. I can still remember stats that are on the cards. I still have baseball cards from when I was in from second grade to right about eighth grade to this day at my mother's house. And I used to love going up to Gibson Field and playing from t-ball all the way to fast pitch baseball, and that was one of the great joys of my life. And I was a really good catcher. I mean, I was an all-star, played on a couple traveling teams, and now that I look at it, I was a real physical catcher. I love when they tried to knock me over at the plate because even if I didn't have the ball, I would knock them out and wait for the ball to get there. I was always kind of rough, and
Yeah.
I was that was the position I play. I played catcher because I knew I can get dirty, and if someone would dare come down that third base line and try to knock me over, and but yeah, baseball was my thing, and I still I love the sport to this day.
How come you didn't? I'm assuming you didn't play baseball in high school. Is it?
No,
How come you didn't pursue that?
you know what? Then baseball, what happened was after about I was about 12, 13, baseball got really hard. I mean, I never forget the first time. I remember playing against Rick Harvilla and a team of all stars. Rick became our coach. I mean, our quarterback, of course, and a great relationship with his father and brother. And he threw a curveball. I didn't know that you could actually throw a curveball at that age, and I looked like a fool trying to hit it. And what was even harder is when, as a catcher, trying to catch a curveball because I didn't know where it was going. Then I realized that you really had to spend time playing baseball. The greatest hitter of all time will hit the ball 3 out of 10 times, and you're considered a success. And I wasn't willing to put that kind of work into the game, really, because I saw something across the field. I saw, football, which is as hard, but my physical skills, the dog that was in me, the aggressiveness that was in me, I said I would do better. I would do better in that, and I stopped playing baseball. I mean, I traveled. I was part of like some major. I stopped playing baseball completely when I was 13 years old.
And was that to kind of pursue and zero in on football, or was it just time?
It was time, and then football came, and then my dad gave me the green light, and I play for the Little 49ers on the west side. Playing for Little 49ers. We're practicing on Shenley Field. Uh, People that I met then are still my friends. Tom Mager was my lineman. You know, uh, so many people. I'll call names and I'll forget. I started playing football, and I wanted to play running back. And my friend told me, "Won't you go over there with the offensive line?" And so I was an offensive lineman. And I was like, "But coach, I want to play running back." And then he gave me the ball, and I scored or something. And not only did I become a running back, I became the starting running back over the friend who told me to go to the offensive line. I guess Dallas and Ron, he saw what was about to happen, and he's my friend. He's my friend to this day. But he said, "Why don't you go over there with the offense?" Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Man, I got that ball, ran down. He said, "Oh, there's our running back." So yeah, football was my thing. It's the only thing I've ever played since. Yeah.
Now, as you're getting into that football experience, like who are the influences to your game in the way that you played and in the manner that you played?
Um, this is going to sound so. Uh, my father um, got me uh, a VHS tape of Jim Brown, who was his absolute idol. I mean, my dad, to this day, he has a picture with Jim Brown that he treasures, um, and him autographed Jim Brown and someone else. But my dad showed me just some runs of Jim Brown, and I wanted to run like him. And then I saw NFL films. I used to watch this one NFL films I recorded. It was Walter Payton running up a hill with the kangaroo spikes on, and he had on
Mhm.
the white headband. And they showed how he ran, and his mantra was "Never die easy." Matter of fact, I bought his book and I read his book. He said he ran the ball like John Wayne acted in movies. He never died easy. He never ran out of bounds unless he had to run out of bounds. And another person that I followed that became like my idol, I never met him, but I knew so much about him, was Ted Bell. Ted Bell was a running back for Mooney in the early 70s. My Uncle David actually got me a reel to reel when I started playing football of Ted Bell, and I saw some of the runs. This guy came out. He came out the same year that Tony Dorsett came out of Aliquippa, and he was the number one rated running back to come out that year. He got injured, but he still made his way, I believe, to Michigan State and played. But it was Jim Brown. It was Walter Payton. My goodness, and it was Ted Bell. I wanted to run hard like them, and of course, as I played in high school, was other people, even contemporaries that I followed, like Sean Patton. I thought he was just amazing, and Diallo, people like that. But definitely, it was Jim Brown, it was Walter Payton, and it was the Ted Bell. I believe the best to come out of Youngstown, Ohio.
It's funny you say that because I was before today I was going back watching some of the highlight films, and even some of the games of your senior year, and just watching the film. I'd kind of heard stories from Ron and different guys that coached you, but just really sitting and observing it, there's a violence to the way you ran, and I mean that, like, you're really not falling backwards, trying to go through guys, and you had the ability to make cuts, but there was a decisiveness in the way you approached it, and there's some backs that I feel like they impose their will on guys, and you get one-on-one with the safety. Eventually, after 3-4 times, somebody's going to give, and it's not going to be you. Like, that was the way that I kind of just what I saw in the film, and is that how you kind of approached it?
Yeah, most definitely. It's that is that's Coach Ron Burtis. My sophomore year, he said, "Son," because I thought I could outrun everyone, because I thought it was like playing for the little 49ers. Wrong. He said, I'm not going to tell you how to run, but if you just go north and south, I bet you it's better up in there than out there. And then I started planting my foot and hitting the hole. And then I said, shoot, this is it right here. And then, later, I didn't have any moves, but I had one, and I could do a little shake and just go straight. So I just started running violently, because I'm going to tell you something. My sophomore year, I don't know what my average yards per carry is, but every carry was violent. Either I was getting it, so I said, listen, I better start giving it. And things got better throughout the years. But definitely, when I saw Walter Payton, he ran like he was possessed. And Jim Brown, there's a story that's true. My dad used to tell me, but it is a true story. Jim Brown would get in the huddle, and he would say, "Give me the ball." So they would say, "Give Jim." So Paul Brown, "Give Jim the ball." And they would just run the same play all the way down the field. Everyone knew he was going to get it. And he averaged 5.2 yards a carry and retired in the NFL in '69 and had his best season. I mean, I just think he's an unbelievable athlete. So I tried to pattern my game after him and Walter Payton. And thank you, Coach Burtis.
Can we keep it real for a moment?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, being that I was there for your whole development, and this isn't a knock on you, because, before I say any of what I'm about to say, there's no question that you were a tremendous football player. And that's not just offense, that's both sides of the ball, pound for pound. When you hit your peak, there wasn't a better back in the area during our time. Now, there were guys that, had different skill sets and different levels of talent in different areas. But, the one thing that I always remember was, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you were always too fast for your feet. And some of the moves that you made, they're awkward, but you know what you're doing, and you could. So you always took like an extra stutter step when you shouldn't, or it's just not technically correct. But the one thing about you that you could always do is you could stop and then reaccelerate, and it was like you never stopped your stride or stopped running. And then you always hit the hole very fast. Initially, when you got the ball, some guys, as you get into higher level systems, and especially on that professional level, it's about setting up blocks and being patient and allowing the hole to develop. But for you, because you weren't afraid of that, what's on the other side of tight 4, tight 5, you're going in there and you're like, okay, whoever's waiting over there, I'm gonna get them before they get me. So there were times where you would go to the sideline, and then the flow is going this way, and you would stop, take a stutter step, and then reaccelerate through the seam, and it would just catch defenses off guard. And then there were times where you come through the hole, you get to the second level, and if it was a safety and you're just moving too fast to make that extra cut, well, we know you're about to run right through his face mask. And I think, you know, that's a good way to set up bigger runs later in the game, because if you punish a guy 2-3 times in that first quarter, you
Most
know, third quarter, fourth quarter, he's not even getting close to where you're at. And you know, when I'm thinking about that, you know, I think about that run that you had against Buchtel, and you know, you squirt through, get past the linebackers, and then I think it's Thomas Brazil. You guys meet face to face, and it's a great collision.
Mm.
You know, he gets his, you get yours, but you pop right back up immediately, and you're like, almost like to the point where, hey, that didn't even affect me, and I'm coming back again, and I'm gonna win that next round.
Yeah, I used to. Yeah, I looked at. I haven't seen our like highlight film and like a run or anything, but I remember my feet would like. Um, I don't even now look at. I feel like I look kind of strange, man. You know, because I was. You're right. I don't know what I was doing, man. My feet were like I was. I know this is. I just preached on it yesterday. You get a chance to watch it. I preached a sermon called "The Big Payback," and I referenced James Brown, but my feet would kind of like do like his, and then I would go where I would go, and I always wondered if I didn't take that stutter step, I may could have gone wherever. But I used to run angry because the more contact I got, the more upset I would get, and the more into the game I would get, and I would want the ball more. I would yeah, it was like I don't know, I can't, but I love the contact. I love knocking and I took a lot of L's too, you know. But man, there is nothing better when it's fourth in a blade of grass and they know you're gonna get the ball. I love that, man. Yeah.
Will you tell that story talking about, maybe we're jumping ahead a little bit, but you know, when we were talking on the Once a Cowboy podcast, you talked about that fourth down on the goal line and
Oh yeah.
Burtis coming out, and can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, yes. Ron, no, I loved it. Listen, let me tell you something. Let me set it up.
And were you in the huddle with him, Ron?
No, I was on the sideline for that play.
Listen,
That was double tights. Go ahead. Sorry.
we're about at the I don't know 2-3 yard line. It's fourth down. Coach Burtis walks out real slow. He comes in and he looks at us and he calls he calls five. What was the play? Was it stack five? Ron? That was
Tight,
yeah.
tight.
We
It was
stacked
tight
34,
four.
35.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
34.
And you know, he's the coach. So we like, all right, cool. And I looked over and the you know, English is that we're still I'm good friends with Chris. And coach walks off the field and I grab I don't know what guy I grabbed coach and I said, stack five, coach. And I can't say what he said on this podcast and my mom and dad may watch, but he said, you better get it. And we ran the play, and before we ran the play, both English brothers are sitting in the 5 hole. I'm like, God dang, you didn't really mess this up. And uh, I was able to get in a great blocking, and we scored. But I always ran better to my left, even though I'm right-handed. Even most of my runs, I ran to the right. I would always come back to the left for some reason. So I said, if I start on the left, if I go, I would be all right. And but that was I didn't call the play because it was still the same blocking, but just on another side. But Coach Burtis said, you better get this. And that's the only time I've ever done that in my playing career. And it worked. And we won. and that was a great day.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that a little bit deeper because you some people may not know uh, how your rise happened. So as a sophomore in 1990, you're elevating to the varsity level because you're a prospect that did very well on the freshman team. You showed some great promise, and you were definitely ahead of the curve and working out. You had great strength for your size for such a young player, but you just hadn't quite developed physically, meaning you hadn't filled out yet. But you were making noise early on as a defensive back. You won that safety position as a sophomore, and then we go through camp, but we already have a formidable, established, well respected tailback in Matt Gilchrist.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of comparison, as far as stature, you guys are right around that same height. But at the time, he was a weight room warrior, and he was just really put together and very solid. So I have part of my question is, you know, knowing that you're coming up and you're going to be competing with him, and really initially expecting to be the backup that spells him in those early parts of camp. What did you pick up from Mac? What did you learn from Mac? Or what did you think about him as a back and a person to pattern yourself after or pick up tips from?
Gil, I idolized Matt Gilchrist. He was just, first of all, he was cool, and
Mhm.
I can still see him slide, 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 slide. He was just cool. The way he just, everything he said, I was just in awe of. And he was a hell of an athlete. And I was his little brother. And Gil was the starting tailback. And Gil went through so much at Chaney. He was never a part of a winner until the year, until my sophomore year, his senior. He was always, I mean, his stats, he was all city, great running back. He was the free safety, you know,
Mhm.
and I would not have played, and you know this, and a lot of people know this, not when I played, but Gil acquiesced and became a fullback so that uh, myself and Damon could play.
Yeah.
He became, I wasn't even, when Gil became a fullback, I wasn't even the tailback. It was Damon Taylor who was the tailback. Um, Damon gets injured in one of our scrimmages. He still plays, has a great year. I mean, he was one of the fastest people I ever met. I've known, me and Damon played together for the Little 49ers. He was on the 120s, I was on the 105. But it was Gil becoming a fullback, sharing carries, because he got to the point where he wanted to win. It was just great being around him. Man, Kendall, he had some of the best shakes on the football field. He played corner that year, and he taught me how to play free safety. He said, just look at the uncovered lineman. If you see that lineman a run block, this is how we're thinking now. They have so many disguises. If they run block, you follow that lineman. If they pass block, you get to your deep third. So instead of looking in the backfield, being confused against Fitch when they would run the wing T, I was looking at the uncovered lineman, and that lineman always took me to the play each and every time. Gil is a great friend, mentor, and brother beloved.
And to me, I heard that story about how, Ron talks a lot about that collectively that group laying the foundation, but Mac in particular with really um, being an integral part of it. And for a guy like that has been the feature,
Mm-hmm.
to step aside, um, like to me, in my mind, Like there's nobody else in the locker room that can complain about anything if he's willing to do that.
Right.
And then that probably sets a pretty good example for you young guys coming up. And then as you start to make your own way and you win games, but I think that I don't know that's a pretty impressive story. I don't know that I could be that guy like that. That's pretty impressive.
Alice, I can remember him on the bus after the Fitch game. We lost the game, and he said, Sylvester, you did good today, man. I'm proud of you. And then after the Campbell game, remember we used to have our schedule was just brutal. After the Campbell game, he said, we lost, we got blown out. You did good today, Sylvester. And hearing him say doing good was like the best thing because I knew his journey and what he went through. And it's been a little while since I've spoken to Mac, and you guys, I'm gonna definitely look him up and chop it up with him. But he was special, man. He was just a great player. Matter of fact, we went into the Chaney Hall of Fame together in the same ceremony.
Yeah, he was a real leader, and truth be told, and it's not to take away from anybody else who was part of that team, because we had other guys that were leaders, we had other guys that played very well, but he was the guy that set the pulse and the tone of that team in particular, because I remember he played hurt. He showed up in games where we really needed to get some tough yards and make some things happen. That city title win against Rand that 1990 year, that last drive he took over, and really he saw that title right there within reach. Yeah. And that last drive, they just fed him the ball. And when he scored, it was like, it's that turning point moment where you're no longer just regarded as that team that is going to play tough, kind of keep it close, but we'll get the win in the end. He basically was a main cog in getting our class to recognize, like, hey, just because we're over at Chaney doesn't mean we can't be excellent. It doesn't mean that we can't win and we can't do things well.
Yeah, don't get it twisted. Mac, he went to fullback. He let me get on the field. But Gil, you realize that last drive, I was nowhere to be found. Gil be like, Sylvester, I got it. Anyway, Gil, and he was, come on, stay, go back. I mean, Gil, man, was just he's one of the best I ever saw. I mean, for real. I love Gil. Yeah.
So let me ask you guys this question. So, and this is kind of to both of you, and both, I forget exactly who said it, but viewing Chaney as an upstart, right? We're going to come, they're going to come play you hard. They're going to be physical, but we'll get them. Which ironically is how, Ron, you've kind of talked about some other teams, as you guys transitioned your junior senior year. Like you've talked about the tradition at South, at East, and you guys coming up, viewing those players and the success they had. So, like, what was the view of your guys' future at Chaney, especially when your freshman year, I think they go 1-9, right? Yeah, 1-9, and then your sophomore year, it's 5-5. That's when you win it. You know what I mean? Like, you guys talk about the memories that you have, the relatives that you have, the experience that you have, and we're going to a new environment. What was your expectations?
Ron?
Either one of you.
No, go. I want you to give your thoughts and your opinions on that.
Well, yeah, we were 1-9. Sam Martucci returns a punt against South, and we beat South that year. I was on the sideline, and we had a player on the team by the name of Rich Sylvester, my man. But every time they said the name Sylvester, I would run to Coach Burtis. And he would tell me, "What are you doing?" You said Sylvester, because I was, and never put me in a game. Then we go 5-5 my sophomore year. You know, as you the question what was my expectation of being at Chaney? Is that what you're saying, Dallas?
Well, yeah, like you didn't grow up on the west side.
Oh,
You view you like south and east at that time are probably the guys that you're viewing, that you're
right.
following, and they're having success. And then you go to Cheney. What was kind of the expectations?
Well, you know, I was a little bit ahead of the curve. I was half of my seventh grade year I was at Princeton. The second half I transferred on a racial balance transfer to Volney. So I was able to, you know, football teams, organizations, it's about culture. So I was able to get into the culture of the West Side and being a Chaney Cowboy. I didn't get a chance to play football at Volney because I played at Princeton. So half of my seventh grade year, my full eighth grade year, I'm developing relationships. Me, Rick, Tommy Mager, Tom Tillapan, all these guys, we were coming up together. So about time I get to Chaney, I'm oblivious to their history because I don't know anything about it because we were South High Warriors. Wilson Redmen. I wanted to go to Wilson because of my cousin. I thought Kevin Harris was the best football player God had ever made. Ward number 6. I can tell you his stats. Followed him at the University of at Kent University. I almost went to Kent because of Kevin Harris. But I didn't know the history of Chaney until I got on the field and I saw how we were losing. And so my expectation was that we're going to turn it around. I really believe that. I truly believe, not myself personally, but I believe that we can turn it around. It was hard going to Chaney. Even my mother and father, their culture, they were brought up to go against Chaney. They went to north, they went to south, and my mother said, my grandma said it's gonna be hard for me for me, but I'm gonna root for you at Chaney, because it was about south side, it was about east side, it was about north side, and that was your side. Even though north was on the east side, I never understood that, but and ran. So from my point of view, I knew that I just felt that we could change it. When I say we, not just African Americans, I'm just talking about these guys who were coming from Volney, had a winning culture, and then when my boys came over, when Ron came over, and Dwayne and Mark and Stacy and Aubrey and Marco was all. I mean, I just knew. And it was coming. I knew it was coming. We could turn around. Now Ron's may be a little different, but I knew that eventually we would turn it around.
Well, my assessment of pre-90 and the landscape of the city is, when you talk about South, when you talk about East and Rand in particular, those teams had some really great, exceptional athletes as a collective. You had a lot of size on those South and East and Rand teams. So, you're a little outmatched man for man in terms of physical development. But with our group and our era of playing in the city, and I don't know that the competition that we face was as glued together as some of those previous East teams, Rand teams, South teams. But what separated our era, which would, be 90, 91, and 92 especially, is our conditioning was on such a high level as a team that we just, even those teams that could keep the game kind of back and forth in that first and second quarter, by the third quarter, we were never tired, and we never stopped coming. Like Dwayne Thompson, he said it, the way we ran to the ball and pursued on defense, we were just wearing teams out. And then once they got gas, we just mashed down. And, Pat, like we talked about earlier, Patton is running harder in the third and the fourth quarter than he is in the second quarter. We typically opened up games running a lot of toss to kind of, get the defense running sideline to sideline.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come back 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3. And then as those teams would get tired, Patton would just punish people. Pat Grossen would punish people. Our senior year, Kenyon Meadows as a fullback and Phil Bowser as a fullback, they embarrassed some guys with some of the things they did running the ball, because they were, Kenyon wasn't a shifty, elusive guy, but he was so strong. There's a run against Camel where a guy grabs onto his jersey.
He drags
him. Kenyon's at like the 15-yard line, and he's just churning and churning. He drags this guy for 10 yards, sliding around on his back like he's pulling a sled.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think, when I think back about it, like that 92 Rand team, athletically and at the skill positions, they had great guys. They had Reggie Jones as a quarterback. He could operate that wishbone. They had 3 great backs in Herman Benson, Eugene Young, Mike Grace, and even Tyson Spinks was in that mix.
Wow. Yep.
And then, they could throw the ball. That 90 years, South had some real athletes on that team. Booker Newberry was the quarterback, and he was a all-state basketball player, Division I scholarship guy going to St. Mary's out in California.
Mm-hmm.
Wilson had their guys here and there. They just didn't have the size across the line to match up with that strength that was on our line. And then, when it came to, going against our defense, we didn't yield. We gave up like 6.7 91 and 6.9 in 92. Only gave up 2 touchdown passes through the air in 92. So, we were just overwhelming teams.
Well, so let me, I guess, but what's the, when you grow up on one side of town, you have these connections and relationships. How hard is it to buy into all that's coming at you?
Not hard at all, because for us it's about football, and we want to play football. We'll play football anywhere. It doesn't matter where it's at. If they told us that we all had to go to the Salvation Army and play for the Salvation Army, we would have been 9-1 at the Salvation Army.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a joy. I can't. I know some racial components happened. Some things may have happened while we were there. Things were said about us, and maybe vice versa. But nothing that made it difficult, or to make that trip. We lived basically. We lived on the other side of Mill Creek Park, was the west side. We were closer to Chaney than some people who lived on the west side.
Well, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but this is the 3rd or 4th time that I've heard it. You guys make that move in '89, right?
Yeah,
1989, and we're talking about like the racial balance transfer. Like, to me, that's kind of like, I don't know. It's really at that point in time, almost the '90s. I don't know. It's just really kind of shocking that was.
Well, the racial balance transfer it's not about race. It's about economics, because, when you talk about the reason why the schools are progressively becoming one demographic over another, it's because of the downturn in the steel industry, and the slowdowns and the recessions that we had during the 80s, and it impacts those neighborhoods. So you have Chaney not getting a lot of diversity in terms of who lives on the west side. And then, like when we talked to Malcolm, where you have those agreements, neighborhood pockets of the city. Down here in Columbus, they call it win-win initiatives where certain suburban schools have a boundary line that extends deep into Columbus City schools territory, just to balance things out in terms of the makeup of the school. So, we weren't any different than what Wilson had been, those 10 years before Chaney. You started seeing a lot of Southsiders navigate away from going to South as the traditional feeder and becoming students at Wilson. So there's a pipeline of kids going there. I'm talking to some older gentlemen who are, 20 years before our time and finding out, some of the same things were going on at different schools around the city then. I found some guys that lived on the south side that ended up going to north. They lived in South District, but they spent their last 2 years over there at North. And, as schools close and things shift around, population declines, you just kind of have to settle some of the numbers so teachers don't lose jobs. So I don't think, that transfer, the effect of it is we get a opportunity to go somewhere different. But, the vast majority of the people that came along with us, it wasn't for academic gain, and it definitely wasn't for athletic gain, because neither one of those things were any different or better from one choice or the other. It's just that we happened to choose to go to Chaney, and mainly because some of the older people in our neighborhood were just having a good experience over there. It was different than the culture that we got used to going to Cleveland, Princeton, or South.
You want to throw some film on here? Get some.
Oh yeah. Let's
Patton
preface
check
this.
It out a little bit. Go ahead. Preface it.
So when we talk about you as being one of those Chaney greats, and I wouldn't quantify it with a number, whether you're in the top 5, the top 10, the top 20, 25. And the reason why is because I think sometimes our reference point gets lost, and it's only limited to the era that we've seen with our own eyes. So we don't know those guys from the 20s in Youngstown, the 30s, the 50s, the 60s. So I'll put you in the era of, you dominated your time, you dominated your era, you got better each and every year, and you grew. The maturity in your running from 1990 to 92 was like light years apart. You run tough. As a sophomore, you gain about 700 yards, score 7 touchdowns. And then, you come back that next year, the line is a little bit more experienced. You know what to expect, and you put up 1,105 yards in 10 games, and then 1,134 yards, including the playoff game. You score 15 touchdowns, just under 200 carries with 198, 5.7 yards a tote. And then you follow that up with your senior year, put the ball in your hand a little bit more. You toted 206 times over 12 games. You end up with 1,071 yards, 5.2 yards per carry, still have 15 touchdowns. And you shared the ball a little more your senior year than you did your junior year.
I shared it with you, Ron.
Well, I got my little touches here and there where I could manipulate my way into the huddle, but just that.
I want to talk. I want to talk to Coach Burtis about that too.
Well, and I think it's important to say, you said it in the previous podcast. There were times where you didn't even play in the second half of probably about 4 games, and you had a giant game your junior year against East Liverpool, 215 yards. But in the games that were on the line in the games that were really tough. You know, you're getting the ball 25 times, you're carrying the ball 30 times, and you're playing defense too. You know what I mean? And you're out there on punt return. So you were durable. You know, you were a tough guy. And that's not to say that you didn't get hurt or you didn't get your nicks and bruises here and there, but your mentality, you played through all of that stuff. You know, you were a devastating hitter as a free safety. You know, I don't think there was a person that I played with that filled that alley better than you did during that time. And you know, when you met people head on and came up and gave that contact, usually the play ended right there on the spot. You know, we laugh and joke about JOPs and, you know, smell his hand and gutter and all of that. But, you know, you really were about football back then. So when we show this film, you know, you need to pull Steven. And if he don't know, then you better tell him. And if he don't know from you telling him, you can always call me because I'd be happy to tell him that his dad was one of the best backs to ever do it.
All right. Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
All
right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. And Patton, I want you to take us into the mindset of what we're seeing on these particular plays.
All right. I haven't seen these things in a.
So here is East Liverpool, I believe.
Okay.
Well, this is the 1991 highlight film.
Okay.
And so this is that game.
Wow.
Well,
and that's that number 82. That's an all Ohio linebacker, Nate Boyd.
Yeah, he got the business that day.
Yeah.
And this is gonna pop here throughout. Is that you jumping?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's 23 here?
Jason Benson.
That's JB. Yeah.
Okay.
East always has some hard hitters on there, man. That's Mike Billy.
Here's a nice little block by you.
Yeah. That's Heron. That's Howland.
That was 120 degrees on the turf that day.
Do you remember how South High players were dropping left and right? That game, I mean, we too, I mean, just cramps and sweating and wow.
You know, I forgot about those Saturday games where conditioning really kicked in. Those Saturday afternoons that were just brutal.
Now this quarterback is suspect here.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that Ron Allen?
He couldn't get it in the end zone. He didn't have an arm.
You crazy? That's what you call a back shoulder throw before they even knew what that was.
I remember that. This is Wilson. Yeah.
Hey, so let me ask you this. If you notice, and Ron talked about it, and this was something that I noticed on film, when we were running toss later on, probably with your brother Marcus, even after, like you're downhill right now.
Yeah.
Like was that you, or was that the design of the play? Because it evolved, and I like when I was watching this, I was thinking, man, like he can't wait to get the ball.
I used to run. I used to bow it out until I realized that wasn't working, because the quicker I can get north and south, the better. If I get my shoulder pads turned, it's a wrap. And
Yeah.
and plus, I think that was Billy at fullback. I already know he's gonna just destroy this end. Yeah. Who's that against? Oh, that's Rand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Athletes. My goodness.
We'll throw a little on from your senior year. If you give me a minute here.
You're able to towel it vertically.
Say that again.
Are you able to towel the windows vertically with the screen share?
Yeah, what did it look like on the other ones?
Well, I couldn't see the bottom of some plays because it ran into where we were, our faces were. Now, Seal, you remember what determined whether we blocked down and kicked out versus sit, hooking or sealing the end?
I don't remember, man. Yeah, it was. I thought about that when he asked that question about running down. It was
on toss.
Yeah.
I think at that point in time, it was probably an extended ISO play. So you had 34, you're kicking out that end. 36, right. You're kicking out that outside backer. So it was really an extended ISO. And then I think as the inside scheme started changing, we started running more zone. It became more of a read that front side end. If he runs, that tight end's pushing him. If otherwise you're trying to get the corner and then just the back's kind of slow playing it, seeing it cut and going.
Because our senior year, we used a lot more motion from the wing with myself and Heron. We would be responsible for sealing the end as opposed to the year before.
Yep.
How does that look? Is that better?
Yeah, I could see everything.
All right. So this is from your senior year. And that's before the Bookdale game.
Burtis has some speeches, boy.
There's medals.
That's medals. We played at Southfield House, man. That was a dream to me. My dad played on that field.
Looks like he's Liverpool again, huh?
No, that's South.
That's South, yep.
There. Okay.
This was a stat.
Ron Allen?
Ron the Rick.
Yeah. But Rick couldn't finish it. I blame it on the quarterback. If he'd have let him a little more.
Now, this is the run we talk about. Look at this guy get drugged.
Oh, man. They'll Roddy out. Oh, he didn't trust his speed. He didn't trust his speed. Who is that?
Turret. John Turret's little brother.
55 yards. Gone. No.
Here's the next one.
I had a little bit of speed.
So there you go. Downhill, man. Downhill.
I ran through this dude, too. Yeah. This grossing. When I tell you Pat had wheels, Doc.
Now look at this block out here on Troy Miles.
Yeah. Doc, why'd I do that to Troy? I got a call. That was, man. I don't even feel right about that.
Yeah, Troy played at
We might have to
Gallaudet.
cut that out.
Yep. Yep. Here go. Gone. Had a little bit of wheels. Now, if that field would have been 70 yards, I'd have got caught.
This is the play where you change the side.
Yeah.
Oh, he's just thanking God he got in. I don't got to go back and see Burtis and get yelled at.
Coach Burtis told me you. Oh, he cussed me out all the way to the sideline. But he trusts.
But he called it.
But he trust us. Yeah.
But he called it. Yep.
I'm telling you, this dude right here at Toledo, he could have been an All-American wide receiver if he wanted to. He was so gutter. Oh, it's my dude, though, man.
I'm pretty sure I'm wide open on this, but he throws it to Dwayne.
And in Dallas, what we talking now, this is how we talk to each other. Like, okay.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. We all in the same car, either in Dwayne's or my car, or Ron. Who was that?
Who you think?
You know what I love about this? Here's what I love about this. And every chance I get it, every time I get a chance to tell Ron about it, I do. Where's it at? Everybody's in a 3-point stance except for the quarterback.
Yep.
Wide receivers.
Well, that's a Bear Bryant
and
thing.
the tailback. Sorry, and the tailback.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. That comes from Bear Bryant in Alabama during the Veer days.
And he believes you can get off the line quicker, too.
Yeah. And you don't get jammed because your chest isn't exposed.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's pressing, though.
Nobody's pressing. Oh, okay, that's Wayne. All right. And then Wayne was like our Desmond Howard, man. Ron, he still couldn't get it in the end zone. I don't know what.
Yeah, it wasn't in the cards. I was
there. You go.
Division II
Everybody
DB.
in a 3-point stance. 1992. Everybody's in a 3-point stance.
Everybody 3-point stance, but a tailback and a quarterback.
Oh my gosh! What was that like? Coming out to run a pass route in 3-point stance, Ron?
Well, you didn't know anything else, so you're just happy that there's the ball is going in the air. And
my
the reason
favorite
why
game.
why we couldn't go from a 2-point because Heron kept rolling off sides when he gave us the green light to do it.
I hurt my knee that play, and Ron told me don't get him out the game. Remember that, Ron?
Yeah, I wish we could see that seam route against Rand.
Get him out! I'm like, I thought Ron was my boy. Get him out, coach. I should have been out that game, man. I never missed a high school game.